Welcome back to the Angler Journey podcast for another episode of celebrating success, embracing failure, and inspiring the entrepreneur inside of you. I'm your host, Rebel Saklocha, and today I am joined in studio by another Angler alum, Andrew Bader, owner and founder of Hemp 3D. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
So to get started, tell us a little bit about your business from a 10,000 foot view.
So it's all about hemp plastic and providing products made from the bio-based resin, whether that's us 3D printing it or my brother injection molding it or finding some other supplier to provide the product. It's all about hemp plastic.
Awesome. So backing up a little ways, when did you become interested in entrepreneurship, kind of wrap your mind around what it was, and then find that interest in hemp specifically?
Well, growing up, you're on a farm, you're just, you're an entrepreneur. Whatever comes to be, you have made and you got to create. So farmers are just natural entrepreneurs, and growing up in that, you really develop that way of thinking of how can I make this better? How can I make a space for me in this operation? So starting from high school, I'd say I was always really focused on what is something I can do? What is something I can create to better this world?
Awesome. So you have a production agriculture background, from what I understand. What was that experience like? I mean, did you ever consider pursuing farming in the more traditional sense?
I always kind of knew I wanted to farm, but by the time I graduated high school, I knew for sure. You know, it has its ups and downs. There's a lot of long days, and you're out there a lot of the time by yourself, so you have a lot of time to think and plan, and
yeah,
that's it.
Absolutely. So in the hemp space, how did you get plugged in there, and what initially piqued your interest?
So in 2014, I graduated high school, and that was the same year Congress passed that 2014 hemp bill, which legalized the farming of industrial hemp. So I saw that as a big opportunity, and coming from a crop production background, you're always looking for profitable crops. So corn's been profitable, soybeans are profitable, and you can, depending on the operation, make a lot of different crops. So with that new opportunity in 2014, and with hemp being illegal for 70 years, I thought, well, there's many different products that can be made from this fiber crop, and it's worth exploring.
Awesome. So you have channeled your interest in hemp to bio-based materials. Is that the correct term? How did you hone in that sunglasses were something that you wanted to make and manufacture, and still do to this day?
So I originally, when I started Core Fiber and Hemp 3D, I wanted to make the plastic. So I wanted to get the equipment to mix the fiber with the resins, and that all was very capital intensive, so it would take a lot of money to get going. And there's a limited market for bio-based products, but there's becoming more and more demand every year for having it. So once I found out how expensive and time-consuming it would be to make the plastic, I thought, well, maybe there's opportunity to just buy the plastic and make some useful product. And there was the Hemp Plastic Company that provides bio-based resins like polyethylene hemp and polypropylene hemp and PLA hemp, and it just goes on from there. But always dreaming about the day there's 100% hemp plastic to injection mold, but not there yet. And so once I found those companies that supplied the hemp pellets, and I thought, well, how much does it cost to get a mold made, and who will inject this bio-based resin? And the options are very limited, and molds are very expensive to create. So I discovered that there's a company in North Dakota making a 3D printer filament out of hemp PLA. And PLA comes from cornstarch, which is a bio-based resin that the hemp fiber is compounded into through an extrusion process. And so I took that filament and I bought a 3D printer. And it was the quickest way to manufacture something from hemp plastic for me. And 3D printing was relatively new in 2016, and so it was pretty exciting. And then when you start to work with the plastic, you start to learn about all the reasons or how to deal with it, because bio-based resins are harder to deal with, and 3D printers don't always necessarily print perfectly at each time. You got to really tinker with 3D printers, and you got to be patient with it. And so after a while of running this filament through the printers and developing a knack for it, I thought, well, what is something I can sell? And I thought, well, people buy sunglasses, and they're one of the higher profit margin products out there. So I worked with a buddy of mine, Roderick, and he developed a design on CAD for the first model. We call the Iris model. It's it took a while. It took probably a year and a half or 2 years to really get a product that we could make quickly and sell. Because 3D printing, it can take up to 2 hours to make 2 arms in a frame.
Wow.
And you can speed the process up. You can make the layers smaller or bigger. So there's a sweet spot there to program your printer and get a product that's viable and available on the market.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Can you take us through the timeline of from the point you graduated college to when you founded the parent company Core Fiber to then the offshoots of Hemp 3D and Hemp Vision? What did all of that look like, and at what point did you realize that you were onto something?
Well, it was a slow 6-year process. I founded Core Fiber back in 2016. And I was in the angler program here, going through all the classes and exploring the market there. So it's been a long, drawn-out process of prototyping, market discovery, price discovery, learning how it can be made profitable and scalable. So back probably about 3 years ago, my brother started injection molding hemp sunglasses. Injection molding is a way to speed up the process compared to 3D printing. So 3D printing was a great way to prototype and get a sense of the demand. And I could see there was demand. People thought the product was cool, and they saw the purpose behind it, being bio-based and 3D printed and all that. So, but 3D printing didn't necessarily pay the bills, and injection molding was just the right way forward. So my brother, he bought an injection molding machine. He also bought a resin 3D printer, and he started printing the molds for these sunglasses. So printing them is a lot more cost effective than buying a metal mold from a big company. So it's also another way to start prototyping. So it's been a long prototyping process. And we're always getting better, but this year we come out with the Razor Sun model, and it's injection molded. It's made from hemp PP, and we're pretty proud of the product, and it's comfortable, stylish, and just everything I was looking for when I first started the company. So
Awesome. So, initially after you graduated from college, did you go the corporate route? Did you dive headfirst into your business venture, or what did that look like?
Went back to farming, stuck with what was generating income. It's hard being an entrepreneur, throwing yourself into something and risking it all. But you can do that, especially when you have when you have main income. So I wanted to focus on what made the money at the time, and then do this hemp 3D printing on the side. So I stuck with what I knew, and in my free time, I kept developing the product. And I think it's good to do that. Don't throw away all your other opportunities just because you might be onto something really cool or exciting. But if it's not generating a livable wage for you, you gotta take that into consideration.
Absolutely. So where are you at this stage in terms of scaling your business?
We're just trying to get a big wholesale order in. So we recently started working with the Carl Zeiss lens company out of Europe. They're worldwide, but they're one of the world's leading lens producers. They're high quality lenses. And we had a grow light company, come to us and ask for these sunglasses with grow lenses in them to block out the UV and infrared lights that are in bright grow environments. So we started this year-long process of working with Carl Zeiss to find a lens that would work. So after them developing a specific lens for grow lights, we then had to take those lenses and cut them to shape and fit them into our sunglasses. So we thought the quickest way to do this would be just to use a generic mold on the market and take those cut lenses from Zeiss and put them into our sunglasses. So the next step, I would say, is to find those customers that are really desiring our product. Doing this on the side, it's always a little tricky. If I could throw myself full force at this and really get into the faces of these companies, it's right around the corner, and I can taste it.
Within reach, for sure.
It's almost there.
So I'd love to know, what is it like to work alongside your brother in a professional setting? Obviously, that's a familiar experience for lots of people who go back to the family farm. But in this venture specifically, what has that process been like?
So I work with my older brother, Tom, on the farm, and my younger brother, Steven, with this hemp plastic company. And you got to be patient. You can't get your emotions overwhelmed. So just coming from a place of patience and understanding, and it's not the easiest thing working with your brother, but we try to keep things as separate as possible. So he has his injection molding machines and his CNC machines, and I mainly focus on the marketing. So I have my side of the business and he has his side, and as long as we don't get into each other's spaces, it works out.
Yeah, very good. Well, I was going to ask about that element of having to have expertise in marketing, having to have that manufacturing expertise. How did you both, I guess, grow in your expertise in those, and how did you find your roles? Was it natural, or did you make a decision that you were going to step up in those two separate spaces?
It was kind of natural. Steven was really into chemistry and all the scientific parts of the business, and I was really into marketing and selling. So it kind of just all fell into place, and mainly we were doing what we wanted, what we loved to do. And so he loved to prototype, and he liked discovering, and he's a real self-taught learner. He went to UNL for a few years, but then he ended up starting his own business called Utilitech. And from there, it's just, he's got his side and I got my side, and that's how it works out.
Absolutely. So you have some very established, successful entrepreneurs in your family. Talk about them and how having that influence can be positive. Sorry, let me rephrase that question. Like, being surrounded by like-minded people, how does that help you move forward in your own business?
Mm-hmm. Well, coming to UNL, I carried that passion for entrepreneurship, and Angler was here, and it provided a great space to develop those ideas. And just being surrounded by Tom Field and all the other angler entrepreneurs here is a very powerful experience, because when you're surrounded by like-minded people, you're able to develop a passion more and more for your product and ideas. But growing up, my dad was big into farming, and that translated. Just watching him every day and seeing how he did things and seeing his passion for what he loved to do really motivated me into getting out there and making something of every day.
Absolutely. So what was your angler experience like beyond being around like-minded people? What are some of the courses you took, or maybe a formative moment that you took away from your experience here?
It's challenging, especially when you're developing something new and something from scratch. So, but just having the resources here and the inviting atmosphere just makes it all go around. So,
yeah, awesome. So if you could travel back in time and talk to the 2014 version of yourself, who was just kind of at the brink of this whole hemp idea, what kind of advice would you give him?
That's a tricky one. There were avenues and certain different expenses that probably could have been cut out that I would go back and tell myself to don't buy that, or don't spend money on that, or put more towards this.
Yes.
And but that's just part of the journey. That's part of discovering what your business is about and what you stand for. And going back, sure, there are things that I would do differently, but that's also, those are things that you need to learn.
Absolutely. What would you say has been the biggest learning curve in your entrepreneurial journey so far?
Well, learning how to 3D print took a while, probably about a year. And sometimes I feel like 3D printers have a mind of their own, and you just don't know what's going wrong sometimes with a printer. It could be the hot end is clogged, or the extruder gears are not grabbing the filament, or there might be a computer issue in the computer or in the 3D printer that controls it, or like a wire that's not working properly. So besides that long learning curve of learning how to 3D print, I'd say that marketing has been number one or number two challenge. Just making sure marketing dollars are spent wisely is tricky. So I tend to focus on those bigger customers now, people that it's tricky going to store and setting up a stand there and coming back every 6 months and collecting a commission check. That's profitable, but a good way to scale is to find those bigger customers, those big fishes.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you'd like to see these bio-based materials replace all plastics. What do you see the future of these materials to be specifically here in Nebraska?
So the bioplastic with fibers just used as filler. So they're just in there to take up space and reduce the cost of the plastic. Those have fairly limited uses, but there's a lot of them. You're not going to build cars out of them, but you can even build cars out of hemp or natural fiber plastics that are just as strong as steel reinforced. So it depends how you process the fiber, but you could see hemp plastics and natural fiber plastics and everything from these guitar picks here to aerospace applications and or interior designs in cars. So it's wide ranging, but hemp plastic used as just a basic everyday item is going to be different than the highly processed ones.
What would you say is the biggest misconception that people have about your product? A lot of people hemp to a lot of people is confusing in general. Does that translate into any misconceptions about your products?
Generally, the market I'm around, everyone's very familiar with hemp. I'd say outsiders that aren't very familiar, they have their questions, but it's pretty straightforward and laid out. We're replacing oil-based plastics with bioplastics, and that's the goal, and I think everyone can understand that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you have some guitar picks and a pair of sunglasses in front of you right now. Obviously, our listeners can't see those. But what other, are you experimenting with any other products that you'd like to release eventually?
Yeah, golf tees. We are trying to find a market for these, but again, they're bio-based, made from hemp PLA. So
that's really cool. And they feel just like plastic. Yeah. I mean, plastic-y.
Yeah, they almost are. You can see the grainy texture in them, that natural brown color. Definitely looks different than your average plastic. So it also gives a higher quality feel to some people, not being that plasticky, shiny, your typical plastic touch. So
awesome. So in terms of a price point, how comparable are these to traditional plastic?
They're a little more expensive, but we're really ready to scale. So the more you scale, the cheaper it is per unit, and we just are ready for that customer to come in and say, I want 10,000 of these, or I want 15,000. Just waiting for that large scale order, but without going out and finding those customers, it's not going to happen. So we got to get out there and get in front of their face with these. And
there you go. So before you can get to that scalable order size, what does your manufacturing process look like, and what kind of facilities are you using at this stage? I ask this because I think for a lot of makers who are prototyping products, it seems a little intimidating to think of producing them on a large scale when they're starting in, say, their home or their office, etc.
It is intimidating, but once you develop that prototype and that proof of concept, and you can take it to somebody else that specializes in sunglass production or golf tee production. It's a step-by-step kind of thing. So I prototype in my basement with the 3D printers, and I even do small-scale orders with my 3D printers. But then going from that prototyping stage and going to small-scale production, like my brother does with his injection molding machine and his molds, he can do small to medium scale production, and then if we outsize him, we can go to those factories that specialize in golf tees or specialize in guitar picks and then have them make the bulk of the product. So you don't have to do everything yourself. But if you're trying to, you can take those small steps and don't look at it all at once. Just say, hey, there's demand for this product. I'm prototyping it here. This is how I scale. This is where I'm going to scale. So
awesome. Well, Andrew, as we round out our conversation today, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I'd just like to say that you vote with your dollars. So if you stand for sustainability and you want to take care of the planet and you value those kinds of things, then buy things that are made with those principles in mind. So don't go out and buy a bunch of paper towels and just go through them and throw them away. If you care about something, support it with your dollars.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Once again, that was Andrew Bader, owner and founder of Hemp 3D. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Angler Journey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so we can keep building people, building businesses, and building this community.